Welcome back to Southeastern Saddle Hunters. In today's video, I'm going to be discussing 3 different methods I've used to hunt from elevated positions, up in trees, on public land. The first one is ladder stands. I've had 2 different ladder stands on public land over the last 3 years, and there's some pros and cons to ladder stands. The first one is it's super easy to use. It's very intuitive. Everyone knows how to climb a ladder and get down a ladder. I think another really big pro for it is it's best for kids. Ladder stands are perfect for bringing kids out. You can sit next to your child, you can talk to them, have a conversation, get them snacks, teach them about what's going on. It's a really great opportunity to try and pass down some of the knowledge that we've gained and some of the experiences in the field. Another big pro for ladder stands is the stability and comfort. Ladder stands, when they're properly secured, feel very stable. They don't shake around, they don't move. Usually you're attaching them to a bigger tree so the trees aren't swaying so much in the wind. And then comfort, they're very comfortable, especially when it gets cold. You can also bring blankets and other things, and there's a lot more room to have a lot of other things with you. When they're also properly secured, they're also very, very quiet. So you can get up in the spot, be there quietly, climb up, climb down, move around, and everything can be very quiet and not alert any animals. Another pro for me that I used was they have some decent concealment opportunities. Yes, the ladder stand sticks off the tree pretty far and the ladder comes out so that everyone can see that, but you can find trees with branches and put them up into the branches so that you can use those branches as kind of some concealment. You can also attach and affix different things to your ladder stands, whether it's some kind of netting or mesh, to try and conceal yourself a little bit better and hide your profile of your body. To me, the biggest pro for ladder stands is once they're out there and they're set up, it is the fastest and lightest way to get to your hunting spot and get set up ready to hunt. You don't need to bring any climbing methods with you, just a harness and go on up. Getting to the cons, the biggest con, of course, with ladder stands is mobility. You're limited to the spots that you choose. When you put your stands up in those locations, you're stuck there. You're stuck in that spot. You can't move a couple hundred yards somewhere else. Moving ladder stands is a big, it's very time consuming and can be dangerous if you're doing it alone. So it's kind of difficult to change positions. Also, ladder stands are so big that when you move them, it's going to affect the wildlife in that area for a couple days. Normally I like to set up all my ladder stands off season and not do anything at all for at least a month before the season starts. Usually June around this time is when I go and set them up. Setting them up can be dangerous if you're doing it alone. It can be really difficult. I always use a harness and a long linesman belt to go around the tree when I'm starting to climb up. But until that ladder stand is secured properly at the top, then it can be dangerous to climb. This last ladder stand that you'll see in the video on the side here, that one I had a friend help me secure that, which makes it a lot more safe. Another con for ladder stands, in my opinion, is safety. Ladder stands, while being secured to the tree and being very stable, they make you complacent. You know, you forget to check the ladder, see if it's rusting, see if the material there, check the straps, make sure everything's good there. And it feels so secure that a lot of people don't wear a harness. And that complacency leads to accidents and leads to injuries. Another con for them is the cost. A ladder stand itself is usually not too bad. It's between $200 and $500. But if you're gonna be doing this on public land and you wanna have multiple spots to be able to hunt from, then you have to buy multiple ladder stands. So if you have 4 different ladder stands and 4 spots you wanna hunt from, you're looking at $2,000, up to $2,000. I had 2 stands out on public land. Each of mine were between the $150 to $200 mark for 2 double person ladder stands. But those were, again, just for me bringing my daughters out and bringing friends out who've never hunted to kind of get them that experience. It's a really good opportunity for that. The last con that I'm going to go over for ladder stands is theft. If you're leaving something on public land over time, it is very possible that someone could steal it. Like I said, I had 2 ladder stands on public land. I went out this year to move both of them to this private property that I have permission on, and one of my ladder stands was stolen. All right, on to my next climbing method. The one I started off using before even ladder stands for me was a climber. Some of the pros for climbers is you have mobility finally. Compared to ladder stands, you can actually start getting out there on public land, finding lots of different trees, hunting from your spots, and being very mobile. It's pretty fast setup. You can get up the tree in just a few minutes. It's not too bad. Comfort is a big pro for it. To me, I think my climber is probably the most comfortable sitting stand I have. However, you get some cons with that as well. But from a comfort standpoint, the climbers are great for that, especially again in cold weather where you can have a few extra things. You can drape a blanket over your legs if it gets really cold, or if it's in the rain, you can drape something over your legs and keep your legs dry. With a climber, another big pro is you actually start to control your height. So you can hunt from as high as you want, whereas a ladder stand, you're really tied into that position of where the ladder stand sits. So with a climber, you can go as 20 feet, 30 feet, 35 feet, as high as you want. But the biggest pro for climber stands is it is the cheapest method to start actually getting on public land, having some mobility. That mobility is key for everything on public land. You can buy climbers from $100 to $500. I think mine was $103 that I bought a couple years ago, just after Christmas, when they had a big sale after Christmas. But you can buy some good summits even on Amazon for $250 or so. So you can find a good climber for a good price. To the cons with climbers, you are limited on your tree selection. You need a good, straight, narrow tree to climb up. You can't have a diameter that's 2 feet wide. You want that kind of 12 to 18-inch diameter tree with no branches the whole way up, and you want it straight. If it's crooked, you're going to have a lot of trouble climbing up it. If there's branches in the way, if you're on public land, if you're on private land or in an area of public land that you're allowed to cut branches, you can trim those and climb past them. But at least where I am in South Carolina, we're not allowed to cut branches and trim branches. So if there's branches on the tree, you struggle getting past that if you can get past it at all. If the branches are too big, you're not getting past it and you can't climb that tree. With that, you also run into things like if there's no branches, you don't have concealment. To me, this is one of the biggest cons for it, is you are just exposed on the side of a tree and there's no potential branches around you. There's no concealment and you're just visible. So your only real method for concealment at that point is just going extra high. Go higher than you would think with a climber. I've been busted multiple times just from the concealment side alone, not being able to go high enough or not going high enough and a deer spotting me before I can get a shot off. Another con for climbers is they are noisy, especially down here in the South, in South Carolina. If you're climbing on pine trees, they make a ton of noise. If you're climbing on hardwoods, they still are quite noisy. There's still metal clanking constantly onto the tree, pulling out the teeth of the tree and making your next move. It makes lots of noise, and that noise can spook deer. Another con, yes, you get some mobility, but you're kind of bulky. Climbers can be heavy, and make a big profile around your back and above your head, and they're big and bulky. Being bulky means when you walk through woods, you're snagging on branches, you're making more noise walking in, and that can cause problems, create noise, spook off deer, and you just lose your stealthy nature. For me, one of the biggest cons that I've experienced is the visibility and shooting angles limitation that you have. When I'm sitting in a climber, at least with my climber, if I have to turn my body while I'm seated, it can make noise, it can squeak, it can do that, and therefore you're limited on your angles if you're seated. Now you can stand up and you can be a little bit more quiet and move and rotate around, but when you're seated, if I have a deer come in on my right side, me being right-handed, it is extremely hard for me to make that move without having a lot of movement, either standing up or twisting my body as slow as I can. When it rubs on the seat, again, it can make noise. So I'm really limited to this kind of quadrant out in front of me, and then to my left, that 90-degree window is really the best window to be able to shoot from. So that shooting angle while seated is really limited with a climber. one of the biggest issues with climbers is, again, going back to the same as ladder stand, is safety. From my research, and I could be wrong, but from my research, climbers create the most injuries per year for all hunters who climb from any elevated position. It's between 1,300 and 1,700 injuries per year from climbers. Almost all of that is due to not having a harness. Your injuries would go down drastically if you did not have a harness. Sometimes straps on climbers break. Sometimes the material breaks on climbers themselves. Some of the steel climbers can rust. You can get to a position where your base is not set properly and your base can fall underneath you. So you need to be wearing your harness. That is critical with both ladder stands and with climbers. That's where all those injuries really come from, is not wearing your safety harness when you're in the woods. All right, on to the saddle. Saddle hunting obviously is the one that I've decided to choose as my primary source of hunting. The one I'm showing here is me one sticking. I'm not going very high. I can only make one move and stay in frame for the camera, but saddle hunting for me is my primary source. The pros for saddle hunting is it's the lightest climbing method. I just have my backpack with my bow or my gun. I have my one stick and I have my saddle on, and that's it. I don't have to have a big bulky climber. I don't have to have lots of other stuff. My saddle is more comfortable than my other harness, so it's really a comfortable way to walk into the woods. It is the most mobile setup because of how light it is and because of how narrow everything is. You're not bulky walking through the woods, snagging on branches as much. Because of that, it also makes it very stealthy. It's a really quiet setup, whether you're using sticks, whether you're using a one stick. You can climb trees very quietly. You're not dragging something up a tree like a cable on the back side of the tree or the spikes on the front side when you're using a climber. With a saddle, you're just placing a stick somewhere, attaching it to the tree, having it bite in, and then climbing up. So it's a very quiet, stealthy way to climb a tree. You also can have really good concealment. You can find trees that have branches and foliage and things like that that you can climb into and set up where you have really good concealment and coverage from that foliage to be able to look out and really hide yourself from the deer. The biggest pro though for the saddle is safety. You're always harnessed in. You have your saddle on, which is your harness from the beginning when you start climbing the tree. You'll see right here in the video of me one sticking, I do attach myself once I get on top of my platform of my stick after my first move. That's just because of how high I put my one stick, but if I was using normal climbing sticks with 3 or 4 sticks, then I'd be attaching the lineman belt from the ground and climbing up. I don't mind being up to the 3 to 4 feet, 6 feet, whatever it is from my first move there and attaching myself to the tree. When I looked at the data, I looked at the research for ladder stands, for climbers, and for saddles. There is no national data on saddle injuries because of how rare they are. There was some incidences case by case from county by county. I think Arkansas had 2 kind of injuries there. Most of the saddle injuries I've seen were just due to improper knot selection or improperly tied knots. So you do have to have some type of knowledge on that. But because the injuries are so rare and still so few people use saddles, there's no national data for tracking for the injuries. All right, let's move to the cons. The cons of saddle hunting. There's a learning curve. You need to learn how to climb with sticks. You need to learn how to tie your knots. You need to learn how to use all your safety gear. There's a learning curve with that. It's not as intuitive as just climbing a straight ladder for a ladder stand, or even a climber where you're just sitting on the platform, pulling your feet up, and then making your next move. Saddles are a little bit more complicated and require a little bit more of a learning curve, but anyone can do it. It's not that hard. You just need a little bit of practice before you actually go out hunting for your first time and try climbing at night. Find a spot during the day, find a good tree, and just get some practice on it. Another con, and this is one that might get some controversy, but comfort. Saddles can be a little bit more uncomfortable than your climber or your ladder stand. You can do things and make adjustments to your saddle to make it more comfortable. That's for sure. But when you're on a long 12-hour, 14-hour day sit, it can be very uncomfortable. There's been plenty of days where I've sat from 5 a.m. to 7 or 8 p.m. And on those days, my feet can hurt standing on my platform all day long. My back can get a little bit sore. So there are some comfort issues with the saddle that, and there's methods you can do to try and alleviate that, but overall the saddle is not as comfortable as a climber or as a ladder stand where you have an actual dedicated seat to sit in. At least in my opinion. Again, that's going to be a controversial one, I'm sure, but in my opinion, saddles can be a little bit more on the uncomfortable side for very long day sits. The biggest con with saddles, though, is the cost. They can be upwards of $2,000 to get your full setup for saddle hunting. I do have a video on my channel where you can get into saddle hunting and one sticking for less than $500. But if you don't follow that advice and you want to, buy a saddle from Tethered for $450, you want to buy a set of sticks for $350, it can start adding up quickly, and you can get upwards close to $2,000 or more than $2,000 on your saddle equipment itself. All right, so overall, we looked at ladder stands, we looked at climbers, we looked at saddle hunting. I still use all three methods. To be honest, I haven't used my climber last season, and I'm not really planning on using it very much, but I'm still planning on using my ladder stand this season a couple times to bring my daughters out to hunt with me. And I will primarily be saddle hunting. I still think it is the best method. It's the safest method. It's the most fun method to use, especially when you're one stick and you're rappelling down. There's nothing quite like it. It's the lightest method to walk in the woods with, and it can be done for very cheaply if you want to. You can buy the premium gear and do that, or you can find ways to save some money and go a little bit on the cheaper side like I did. So let me know what y'all think in the comments below. What do you think about saddle comfort? Because I'm sure that's going to be one big topic that most people would disagree with. What do you think about climbers? What do you think about ladder stands and on public land? And what's your method? Now, one other thing I'm not going over in this video is all the different types of saddle hunting. You can do one sticking. You can use multiple sticks. You can use SRT, DRT. You can use the new raccoon rigs. There's lots of different climbing methods you can use to get up a tree with saddle hunting. In the future, I might post a video on that showing multiple options there of how you can use multiple sticks versus one stick versus some other climbing methods. But in this video, I'm just talking about saddle hunting in general as a whole. All right, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below and I'll address them as soon as I can. Thank y'all for watching. Have a great day.